Thanks, Jeff, very much for your time and sitting down with me and helping me build some content for my audience. And for the audience out there, Jeff and I actually work together, and he's a retired warrant CW5 from the Army. I spent 29 years in the Army, and I think he's going to be a great person to talk to and kind of share his story of almost 30 years of serving our country, and has recently separated just a little bit, I believe just a little bit over a year ago. So looking forward to this conversation, and thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So just for me and the audience, if you don't mind, just give us your background. Where'd you grow up? All pre-military, just kind of your story there.
Yeah, so my dad was in the military. He was a Marine, and he got stationed in the Philippines where he met my mother. And so I was actually born in Subic Bay, Philippines, and lived there for the first 2 years of my life before we came back over stateside. But sadly, my parents' marriage didn't last beyond that. There's some, I guess for him it was a practice marriage, as that can sometimes happen in the military. And as a result, about 2 or 3 years old, him and my mom separated after my youngest brother was born, my little brother was born. So life for me started in the United States, where I am part Filipino descent, part American or Caucasian, with a very non-Filipino sounding name. My mother, because she spoke very little English when she came to the United States, she wanted my brother and I to really kind of have a great start. So she gave us very American names, refused to teach us Tagalog, which is Filipino national language, and really just kind of wanted this American dream for the two of us. But coming fresh off a divorce with two young kids, my mother was really trying to figure life out. So we moved around a lot. We moved around a lot the first 7 years of my life, non-affiliated with the military. Eventually, my mother met my stepdad, who was also a Marine. And so my life has been surrounded by the military service, so particularly the Marine Corps. And as a military brat, you live no longer than 3 years in any one location. And so I always get the chuckle when people ask me, hey, where you from? And you try to tell them, well, I'm a military brat. And yeah, but where have you spent the most time at? Well, it's no longer than 3 years in any one spot. So it's always that chuckle, but a lot of moving around, a lot of being the new kid, even to the point where in high school, I did my freshman to my junior year in one high school. Then I had to move at the conclusion of my junior year and start my senior year in a brand new high school. Ugh. So a lot of moving around, a lot of getting to make new friends and having to say goodbye to old friends and adapt really quickly. But we've lived everywhere you can think of between the East Coast, middle, and the Western. So we started off a lot of time in Virginia, North Carolina, St. Louis area, and also like Washington State. So I think as a kid, I must have lived in 6 or 7 different states the whole time I was growing up. Wow. And then, of course, the trend continues as I joined the military. So
yeah.
As far as what childhood was like, I mean, my stepdad came on the scene when we were 7 years old, and today we would know that he had PTSD. Back then they had different names for it or whatever. He did 3 combat tours in Nam. I don't think he was as adjusted as society would like him to have been. Certainly, my brother and I. But he kind of looked like Schwarzenegger's baby brother. He worked out a lot. He was a Marine. A lot of time in the infantry unit, so he's seen a lot of stuff. And it left him with some things. And he had 2 modes. He was either in isolationism, where he kind of just stuck to himself and stayed in his man cave, or he was in disciplinary mode. So life around him was still tough, particularly for me being the more vocal, non-conformist kind of individual. We butt heads a lot. So childhood kind of revolved around that. And then my mother eventually, she became a Jehovah's Witness at the age of 13. And that changed the dynamics of the home life as well. So, uh, I not a knock on Jehovah Witnesses, but it was certainly a religion that didn't sit well with me.
Right.
Um, and it was kind of a you live under my house, so you'll live under my rules kind of thing. And several times as I brought my desire to not be a part of this religion up, I think when I was 16, my mother actually had me pack my bags to go stay in a foster home as a threat for conforming. And it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
So I tried to adjust and do it for the sake of my mother. I went all in and I did what they call pioneering, where they knock on your door. I was that annoying kid knocking on people's doors on Saturdays, trying to give them Watchtower and Awake magazines. And it was kind of killing me inside because it's something that I didn't really believe in, but it was something that I was trying to do to make my mother happy. And all of that came to a head when I was 17, and I just had enough. And I told her that religion really wasn't for me. And as a result, I was put out of my house
Wow.
halfway through my senior year when I was 17. So I've always worked since the time I was 15, and I got a job, begged a friend to let me stay in the basement and pay rent. I finished up my senior year in high school and joined the military, and then looked back.
That's really interesting.
So,
So,
so
like, I'm just thinking about the whole, like, because yeah, you're new to that high school too, having to leverage friendships that are short-term friendships too. And I had no idea the background around the religion and that impact it had on your household as a youth. That's I can imagine that's very difficult to fake it till you make it in something you don't really belong in and don't feel at home in, and then to stand up for your principles of I'm not going to do this anymore. That's very commendable for you even at a young age.
yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's consistent in my character. Those who know me know that when I see something, like it's very hard for me to when I see something that's wrong that needs to be spoken on.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that whether it's a blessing or a curse, I have to say something about it. So it's one of those things that stuck with me my whole life at this point. So
Yeah, and I find it interesting. I knew this already, but around how, or not the how, but the why you joined specifically the Army versus other branches, it sounds like it was almost a shot across the bow to someone.
yeah, so joining the military, as I looked at the different branches of service, I mean, my stepdad, because him and I didn't get along, I didn't want to go to the Marine Corps. The Air Force, they did not guarantee jobs at the time. And if you think about this in context, I joined Halloween of 1990. So the contracts for the Air Force at the time, they could choose to be picky and say, yeah, you can join us, but we're not going to lock you into a job. And I wanted a guarantee of the type of job I wanted because I felt like I was only going to do 4 years in the military, gain some critical skills and then money for college and jump out. The Navy, there was no way I was doing 6 months at sea without any women on board a ship. There's just no way. It, it, and the bell bottoms, I just couldn't see myself rocking bell bottoms at the
I
time.
could see that.
Well, being a young man with young men's priorities, I mean, the women was kind of the killer in that whole scenario.
Oh yeah.
The Army guaranteed me a job, and it sounded like a good move to go to. So I joined the military, not really knowing what I was getting into at the time, but just knowing that I didn't want to flip burgers all my life, or how I was going to make money for college, or how I was going to make ends meet. And I had friends that were doing stuff on the street that I didn't want to get involved in. So trying to go legit and make sure I had good job skills and a future for myself. And the Army was kind of that pathway forward for that.
So when you joined, it sounds like a lot of that driving factor was around kind of escaping the environment that you were finding yourself, or that future that you would find yourself in if you didn't join, plus that opportunity of education and having that future through that. Is that accurate or?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. At the time, it was just a pathway out from my circumstances. And the more I served in the military, the more I saw that there's so many people with similar stories. You know, people
Yeah.
either join because it's becoming the military service has become a family tradition in some circles, or there were people that were escaping certain circumstances, and so it is refreshing once you get outside your own head and start connecting with people and understanding that there's so many people that have similar circumstances as well, and motivations that cause them to join the military. So it was interesting for that. Funny story in joining the military is that I scored high on the ASVAB, and the normal recruiter kind of thing that happens is they try to sell you all the crappy jobs up front. So I walked in, and automatically my recruiter just told the guy who was doing the jobs, just go to the last page, man. Go to the last page. And he looked at him kind of funny, and they offered me two roles. One was biomedical equipment repair,
Hmm.
and then the other one was the job I actually, the recruiter actually put me in, which was automatic test equipment operator maintainer. I asked him, well, what's the difference between the two? He's like, I'll just put you in for this one right here. It's got the electronics that you're looking for. So a friend of mine who's also joining the Army, the same time frame, he scored a little bit higher than me on the ASVAB, and he ended up being a truck driver for the Army.
Hmm.
And so I'm just like, what happened, man? So yeah, I mean, it was funny just knowing being around the military for as long as I have and knowing the recruitment processes and being able to contrast that from when I first joined. So I was extremely lucky to get the job I wanted.
Yeah, it's kind of funny thinking about whenever I joined. Like I didn't really have anyone to talk about the what the various different options are. It's just the recruiter, and I was limited because of color blindness and what options I had in the Air Force, and my options was security forces, which is police for those that don't know in the military, and then services, which is like cooks, cleaning, stuff like that, and then I had air
Yeah.
transportation, which was loading airplanes. So it was kind of funny how it we're shoehorned into whatever they think's best, not really what we wanted to do in the service. I mean, you didn't even know kind of what you were other than electronics, right? And wanted to kind of have hands on that.
Man, I did not know what AC and DC stood for when I joined the military. And the fact that I was asking for an electronics job was probably laughable to them, but they gave me a critical job training, and
Yeah.
I learned all about electronics in that first year. So um, for high enough from the SVAB, you will definitely you get to pick a role that you can grow into. That's for sure.